So for our first sound, we're going to do the 808 kick drum. For this lesson, we're going to do a short version, kind of the short, punchy 808 kick drum you'd use in a techno or house song. Before we get started actually designing the sound, let me show you a couple things. I have a spectrum analyzer and an LFO tool set up on the channel. The LFO tool, if you're familiar with it, is a volume shaper, but it also has this great little oscilloscope function. So I've turned the actual LFO volume shaping of this off, and we're just using it as an oscilloscope. Because I find, especially with kick drums and low noises, it's hard to kind of hear the dynamics sometimes because it's so low, but if I can see them, I kind of can just eyeball what I want to do. And this is also great because as I make changes, you can kind of see what they're doing visually. And the spectrum analyzer is there just so we can kind of get an idea of what the frequency ranges are. To save myself tapping a billion times on this MIDI keyboard, I've programmed a really basic kick drum pattern. It's going to be quarter notes at G0. So I'll hit play. And that's our starting sound. So let's open Serum. So at the core of this is a really simple sound. And then we can take that sound and we can do all sorts of fun stuff with it. So let's make the basic sound. So we're going to go to analog, we're going to go to basic shapes, and we're just going to have a sine wave going at G0. Now we're going to take LFO1 and we're going to assign it to the level. And then we're going to take the LFO1 and set it to envelope mode. So we're just using the LFO as an envelope. Let's make a nice little triangle shape with a bit of concavity to it. And actually, let's add another point right here. This is kind of how I design stuff. Like, I sort of know just from experience that a good kick drum for me is kind of short and punchy. It leaves room for the bass. So I kind of always try to program it so that it ends right about there. So I'll just lower this. That's a good place to start with. Turn the master up a little bit so you can get a better look at that. You can hear it a little better. So that's the basic dynamics of the kick drum. Next, we're going to take LFO2, set it to envelope mode, and assign it to the coarse pitch. Then we're going to go into the matrix editor and make this unipolar, because we want it to kind of swoop up and then come back down to the fundamental pitch. I mean, you can do in both directions. It gets a little tricky with tuning it, and especially when you're programming like a kick drum and a bass sound, I kind of like, if not to be on the same fundamental, because that can get into weird issues, I like it to kind of work harmonically with it. So if I have a kick in G, I'll write my bass line in B flat or even D. So that's getting really granular with it. You don't have to get that deep. I'm just kind of giving background. Also, we're going to turn the phase random on here because we want the sine wave to start from the same place in the waveform every time. So now it's a little bouncing sound. If we turn this all the way up, we get like a psytrance kick drum. That's way too much. Let's get this down to about, let's try 2 octaves. Oh, and when you're adjusting anything assigned to the coarse pitch, like roughly 9 cents is about an octave. So like roughly like 18, 19 will be 2 octaves. Now let's kind of work in the shape. Oh, let's turn the BPM off so we can dial in the speed of the LFO. Let's bring this down. And this is great because you can kind of dial in whatever speed you want of that initial transient hit just by playing with the rate. That sounds kind of cool. Next, let's go over and we got to create an initial attack for this. Let's go to attacks, kicks, and I think kick 5 or 6. Oh, hit this button here. This will make it a one shot instead of a loop. Yeah, no, 6. 6 is kind of really close to the click that the TRA does. You can play with the pitch a little bit. That's a bit much. And so that's the basic TRA 808 kick. Now let's do a little bit of post-processing. So let's add a glue compressor. And let's add a saturator. Turn this off for now, so we can just dial in the compression. I usually do this at 3. I don't know if that's 30 or 300 milliseconds. I just kind of eyeball this stuff, and after doing this 100 billion times, you just kind of get a feel for it. And then I use 4:1 ratio, drag the threshold down, so you're doing about 5 dB of gain reduction. You can pull up this flow tool. You can actually see what the compressor is doing, which I found is really helpful because, I know, audio-wise what compression's doing, but just being able to see what it's doing makes it a lot easier. Yeah, so you can see the compressor is kind of pulling up the initial transient. And then let's turn on the saturator. I like soft sine. And that sounds immediately better, but it's actually just immediately louder. So I found, especially with stuff like compressors and saturators, pull the output down a little bit and double check to make sure that it's not just making it louder, it's actually making it sound better. So go there, and try bring the drive up a little bit. And last but not least, let's bring in EQ. And I find when you add saturation stuff, it kind of adds a little bit of mud. So we'll bring this down a little bit. And there you go. That's a basic TR-08 process kick drum. And to be honest, you could find this on Splice in 5 seconds. So let me show you a couple of ways that you can spice it up and make it more interesting. All right, so the first thing is you can use all sorts of different attacks. And so just by cycling through the different attack samples we have in this, you can get radically different sounds. Kind of like that one. Then we can also start playing with the waveforms. So triangle kind of sounds like 909-ish right off the gate. And then you can get into weirder ones, stuff that normally doesn't get used as a kick drum. For instance, we take a square wave and we'll assign that to a low pass filter. And then we'll use the LFO envelope that's adjusting the pitch. We can assign it to the cutoff. And that gets kind of like a thuddy kind of, if you want to do electro breaks type of thing, or just hard German techno or whatever. You can even distort that. All sorts of techno fun. So yeah, once you've kind of worked out this recipe for yourself, try all sorts of different things. You can try all kinds of different attacks, all different waveforms. You can even try wavetables. There's a lot. And then I'll show you later how you can layer this with other actual kick samples. And so you can just kind of use this as the flavor of the kick and then use a better post-process sample for the thump of it. Anyways, that's how to do a basic 808 techno kick drum. And next we're going to do a pitched 808 bass.